Hey guys, I hope that you're well. Today I am doing something that I wasn't expecting to be doing so early, but I'm going to be showing you my Nonfiction November TBR. And I think that because Olive has put up her video, Olive at a Book Olive is hosting Nonfiction November, I now have an excuse to put my one up. I will leave a link to her video down below. Check it out, it's great, she has some great recommendations, and it's also just really interesting to see how she has interpreted the prompts, which I think is half the fun of making this TBR, is trying to kind of bend the prompts to the shape of your TBR. So the way that I'm approaching my TBR is I choose 2 books that fit each prompt, and then when it comes to reading them in November, I can read one or both, but I have to read at least one from the 2. The first prompt is design, and I was a little bit literal with this one. So the first book I have to show you is Radical Technologies, The Design of Everyday Life by Adam Greenfield. This is a book that explores the deep penetrance of technology into our everyday lives. The book touches on things like augmented reality, the blockchain, algorithms, the way that algorithms could potentially govern the way that we do economy. It seems really interesting, really fascinating, very contemporary, and I'm interested to see what Adam Greenfield has to say. The next book I want to talk about is Dialogue Concerning Two Chief World Systems by Galileo Galilei. I don't think this will feature in anyone's TBRs. This is a really beautiful edition from the Folio Society. So this dialogue compares 2 models of the solar system. The traditional one put forward by Ptolemy, which says that everything in the universe orbits the Earth, and that of Copernicus, which was, at the time of writing this, relatively recent, and one that Galileo championed in the end. This is the heliocentric model, which says that the sun is the center of the solar system and everything orbits the sun, which of course is correct. So that my link to the prompt design is essentially looking at the organization of the solar system and therefore the design of the solar system. I don't know if I will get to this one just because of its size and because I think I need to be in a very specific kind of mood to read this one. But we'll see. The next prompt is sport, and I think like a lot of people on BookTube, I am going to be the most liberal in my interpretation of the prompt. The way I'm looking at it is this idea of competition and of strategy, especially with the first book that I'll be talking about, which is Thomas Cromwell, A Life by Diarmaid MacCulloch. This is a biography of Thomas Cromwell that has been very, very well received, and it only came out, I think, last year or maybe in 2017. Thomas Cromwell is a figure that fascinates me. I have only ever encountered him in fiction though, and that's why I'm really interested to read something that's a little bit more objective, I hope. I've read, of course, Hilary Mantel's Cromwell trilogy, which will be completed as of March, I think, next year. Very exciting. And I've also read Robert Bolt's A Man for All Seasons, which is a play that focuses on Thomas More. And it's so interesting how these pieces of fiction represent both men so differently, where Hilary Mantel's much more forgiving towards Cromwell and presents more in a less favourable light than Robert Bolt does. Thomas Cromwell is known for being a very cunning figure. He was able to navigate his way around the politics of Henry VIII's court much better than most other men in his time. And this links back to the ideas of competition and strategy. So that's how I made that one work. The other book that I'm picking for this prompt is The Better Angels of Our Nature, Why Violence Has Declined by Steven Pinker. And in this one, I kind of took the idea of violence in sport, bloodshed, physical contact, and just kind of made it work for this one. This is Steven Pinker's book about his thesis that violence in humanity has actually been declining over time, as opposed to what a lot of people think in this information-rich age where we are presented with human atrocities almost daily. And it does contribute to this notion that we are becoming depraved, that we are losing control. And Steven Pinker's putting forward this idea that actually we're not as bad as you think. And it's a very big book, so I imagine this is going to be a very penetrating analysis. I have made some progress with it. I think I'm on page 75, but I read this maybe a year and a half ago and something came up and I never got back to it. So I will be starting from the beginning. I would like to get this done in November, but because it's so big and the Thomas Cromwell biography is so big, I'm not entirely sure. So we will see. So for the prompt true, I chose a work of journalistic nonfiction and a memoir. And I chose these two genres in particular because they represent both extremes, I think, of truth, where a memoir represents an internal truth, a personal truth. It might not be dealing in objective facts, but for the person who wrote it, it was their own experience, and we as a reader expect that they're being completely genuine in what they're writing. A work of non-fiction journalism, which you would hope all journalism is non-fiction, is going to be dealing in external truths, looking in on a situation and dealing with the information at hand to create a coherent narrative and something that is staying true to the facts. Now, of course, in the modern day, what is a fact, really? So the work of journalism that I've chosen is Svetlana Alexievich's Boys in Zinc, which is about the Soviet-Afghan War in the 1980s. And that's all it really says here. I'm guessing she talks about how the war has affected the men in the war, I'm presuming. I've heard very good things about this, so I am excited to read this. This will definitely be read in November. And then the memoir that I chose was Night by Elie Wiesel, which is a very important book and is very short, which is nice. This is about Wiesel's experience as a child in the concentration camps of Auschwitz and I think Buchenwald. I think that's how you pronounce that. If I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments. I am familiar with Elie Wiesel through other media, but I actually haven't read Night. So this one I think I will get to as well. It's very short. It could be a single day read. I imagine this will be quite a harrowing read, but one that I think is very important and I probably ought to have read before now, but nonetheless, I'm getting to it, so I'm very excited. And then for the final prompt, which is voice, I chose two books that are quite different. The first is Annihilation of Caste by B.R. Ambedkar. And in this sense, I chose voice, the voices of minorities, the voices in an oppressive political system. So this book is about caste, as it implies. This work was written by Ambedkar in 1936. And so this book really places an emphasis on untouchables as a necessary force for national self-determination. The untouchables are kind of the lowest of the low in the Indian caste system, and I actually read a novel kind of talking about this very issue, The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy, and she actually writes a very lengthy introduction for this book, and by very lengthy I mean almost half of this, where she kind of looks at how caste is persisting in modern India, and she puts forward her ideas for a solution to this. So I'll be reading this one. I think this is one that I think I'll definitely get to because I want to educate myself more on the caste system. I really don't know very much, so I'm excited about this. And then I will also be reading Steven Pinker's The Language Instinct, and this is what the book looks like. And with this one, I looked at voice and language. And of course, language doesn't just manifest in speech, it also manifests in gesture and also in writing, and often gesture and all of these things can work together to create meaning. So it is a bit of a tangential link, really, but I thought this would be an interesting one to read. I'm already familiar with a lot of the content in this book because I studied linguistics as electives during my degree, and I find it endlessly fascinating. It's a modern classic, it's a very influential book, so I'm still really excited to read it. And that's it. That's my Non-Fiction November TBR. If you have read any of these books, please let me know in the comments below if you liked them or if you didn't like them. Special thanks to Olive at A Book Olive for hosting such a great readathon. I am so excited to be a part of it, and I'm looking forward to seeing everyone else's TBRs. Until next time, bye.